Through 1983, the choice had to be made: fighter jet or alien robot, car or alien robot, handgun or alien robot. But in 1984, Hasbro said, why not both? No one could have predicted just how important that one simple question that was kind of an answer would be, or how it would ultimately shape the toy industry and pop culture altogether, especially after the line was basically left for dead in 1991. But here we are with over 30 years of toys, asking ourselves which figures best represent the innovations and influences from that first 8 years. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the 10 most important G1 Transformers. Number 10. Transforming is a strong toy gimmick, but you can't be afraid to double or triple dip when designing individual figures. Kids like airplanes, kids like cars, kids love train sets. A battery-operated space tank on a space train track is pretty cool, sure, but what really escalates this figure's importance is the incorporation of all those track elements into his robot mode. Omega Supreme's real power is not his size or space cannon, it's his dedication to minimum operational inventory and the economical application thereof.
Ooh la la.
Number 9. While he wasn't the first character whose alt mode is a house for other Transformers, he is the biggest. On top of that, he also happens to be a headmaster, which means that his head is actually the alt form of a separate, smaller transforming alien robot who, by the way, also happens to be a headmaster whose head is the alt form of a separate, smaller transforming alien robot. Think about this. There are 3 separate alien robot identities in play that cannot exist simultaneously independent from one another. In order for Fortress Maximus to be whole, Cerebros must transform into his head, and in order for Cerebros to be whole, Spike must transform into his head. If Spike wants to just take a day off, he forces Cerebros and Fortress Maximus to take a day off as well. Fortress Maximus is the first, the only Transformer to double as a Russian nesting doll. Number 8. Most Transformers fall into 2 categories: vehicles, cars, jets, tanks, and what I'll call things, guns, radios, microscopes, etc., Dinobots and Insecticons notwithstanding. Reflector was a camera, which puts him in the second category of alt modes as a thing, but he also crosses over into another play gimmick in that he is a combiner made up of 3 individual transforming alien robots: Viewfinder, Spectro, and Spyglass. But what really makes Reflector unique in all the G1 figures is that he was only available by mail order, which meant that he was exceedingly rare, strange for a character or characters featured in the very first episode of the cartoon. They were on the ship with Megatron when it crashed on Earth 4 million years ago. Number 7. What's better than 2 for the price of 1? 3, of course. Blitzwing rolled out with a group of Transformers called Triple Changers, upping the ante for cleverly engineered puzzle robot toys from outer space everywhere. A robot, a tank, and a jet? 10-year-old Dan Larson saw the commercial on TV and just shook his head in disbelief. How did they do that? What kind of madness is this? This technology cannot be possible. Is it actually alien? 10-year-old Dan Larson was a pretty easy sale. He wasn't good at math and he could be easily distracted by shiny things. Number 6. 10-year-old Dan Larson loved fighter jets. Heck, adult Dan Larson still does. So it made sense that when the time came to choose sides, 10-year-old Dan Larson chose the Decepticons. When Transformers began, the battle lines were pretty clearly drawn. Cars and trucks versus fighter jets. And a gun. And a radio. Fighter jets, guns, and radios, that's who Dan Larson was. That's who Dan Larson is. In the battle of jets versus cars, as Megatron's right-hand man, as the team's head scout, Starscream was the most important fighter jet of them all. Number 5. Combining has been one of the most important play gimmicks of the Transformers line for its entire run. Combining is the other side of the transforming coin. You can have one thing that turns into 2 things, or 6 things that turn into 1 thing. Kids love construction vehicles, kids love giant robots, 2 themes that would continue to ripple out even through 2015 and 2016 when Hasbro developed their entire line around the concept of combiners, with Devastator, a mega beast of a toy towering over all the other bots, just as he did back in 1985, held out as the standard bearer of the line. Number 4. Kids are hard to read, they are harder to please. They only like a few specific things: cars, trucks, fighter jets, robots, guns, radios, cameras, trains, spaceships, construction equipment, and bugs. And dinosaurs. In 1985, Transformers introduced the first non-vehicle or object-based alt modes with the Insecticons and the Dinobots, living organisms that disguise themselves as a different kind of living organism. They were like werewolves of the Transformers universe, but if werewolves could transform at will and were made out of metal. I'd watch that. That sounds like a really cool movie. Greg, when we're done, please remind me to call Sci-Fi and pitch them Silver Werewolves. Dinosaurs are cooler than bugs, and Grimlock was the king of the Dinobots ipso facto. I think I made my point. Number 3. Of all the object-based alt modes, none has fared worse than poor, awesome Soundwave. The march of time has rendered his alt mode obsolete at best, dead technology at worst. To the kids of today, he must look like a robot that turns into a cuneiform tablet. But let's not get hung up on the radio cassette player thing and just accept him for the awesome thing that he is, a transforming puzzle robot that dispenses smaller transforming puzzle robots that, for tax purposes, are his dependents. No other Transformer has to deal with the responsibility of parenthood while waging intergalactic alien robot civil war. Now, we can argue the necessity of his reckless endangerment of those little robots and cats and birds, but that's not what Soundwave needs from us. He needs our support. He's a single dad doing the best he can. His boss sucks and he majored in communications. Let's just be there for him when he needs us, accepting, non-judgmental. Number 2. While he's not dead technology the way Soundwave is, he is representative of a time gone by when guns were toys, and proudly so. Kids were so tough in 1984 that had the Transformers hit just a few years prior, one of them surely would have transformed into an alt mode of a golden cigarette lighter. What better compliment for your candy smokes than a life-size Walther P-38 with a scope, shoulder stock, and silencer? It was a crossover toy that allowed a seamless transition between playing with robot toys and playing war with the kids in the neighborhood. Despite all his, I'll say, clunkiness of his robot mode, Megatron reigned supreme as the baddest of the 80s bad boys, having been one of the few evil leaders to have actually defeated his noble counterpart. Cobra Commander, Mumra, Skeletor hit the bricks because not only did he kill Optimus Prime, but he cheated his own death by making a deal with the devil of the Transformers world, a creature called Unicron, whose existence required the destruction of living things. And not for nothing, but Megatron, the toy, is still banned from commercial airline flight in the United States. Beat that, truck. And at number 1 is Truck. Optimus Prime. It's in his name, Prime. He's the first, he's the best, he's the most important Transformer as a toy, as a character in the mythology, as the face of the franchise, and would easily rank with Sherlock Holmes, Dracula, and the Wizard of Oz for cultural significance if only copyright law would allow him to fall into public domain, which it won't, ever. He's a robot, he's a truck, his trailer can be a house for other Transformers, he's voiced by Peter Cullen, who I would listen to if he was reading spam emails out loud. He's an old soldier carrying the burden of freedom for all sentient beings here on Earth and out across the galaxy, willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good. Those are the 10 most important Transformers, including most of the gimmicks, the 2 most important characters, and, well, a lot more than 10 characters if you're really keeping count. Thanks for watching. Please give this video a like, even if that's like not your thing. Hit subscribe to show all those people who said you couldn't do it what a bunch of self-righteous jerks they really are. Share this video and let us know in the comments below if you're Team Autobot or Team Decepticon. It's really hard to define most important, I admit, but I think I did a pretty good job of convincing myself that I got it right. I mean, if you can't count on yourself to tell you that you did a really great job, who can you count on? Cut.